AI continues to be a hot topic for small and medium business, but the rapid adoption of AI tools without proper safeguards can lead to new risks and issues for business, including legal and cybersecurity risks, as well as the need to upskill and train staff. On today's episode of the Victorian Small Business Network podcast, the panel will unpack these risks, as well as discuss the ways to safely use AI. I'm Sarah Burke, owner and principal lawyer of SLB Legal, a commercial law firm that specialises in contracts, transactions and tailored legal advice for small business. More recently, this has included guiding businesses through the legal risks associated with using AI. I'm joined by Daniel Wojcik, Managing Director of Codax, an expert in cybersecurity and AI solutions. Daniel and his team help small and medium-sized businesses to establish appropriate security controls and safely adopt agentic AI technology from Microsoft, Salesforce, and Zoho. We are also joined by Olivera Tomic, the founder of 8 People, an agency which provides 360 AI solutions, including AI consulting, AI solutions, and AI upskilling programs. The 8 People AI upskilling program was developed with the aim to educate employees and business owners on appropriately using and implementing and leveraging AI in the workplace. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
I've been really excited to talk about this today because I know myself as a small business owner and plenty of my clients, every day we're being marketed the latest and greatest AI tool to transform our business, the way we work with our customers, the way we work internally. Daniel, I'd love to start with you as a cybersecurity expert. What are some of the cybersecurity considerations that a business owner should consider, and also the questions they should be asking when looking to adopt or implement an AI tool?
Look, I guess, from my perspective, Sarah, it comes down to where businesses have come from. A lot of these organisations that we are working with or supporting, they've had really set and forget style of permission systems for their access and their data. We know that creates major security vulnerabilities because it results in oversharing, people having access to files and documents that they really shouldn't have access to. And the tools themselves encourage that. So if you're looking at SharePoint or OneDrive, a lot of people are running those kind of tools in their business to store files. They really encourage that oversharing and collaboration aspect, but that in itself can create security vulnerabilities. So what we're talking to businesses about is, how can they, look at their data security, look at how their role-based access control works. It's like, for example, giving the tradie to the keys to your entire home when they only need to work in one room. There's ways that you can control this and make sure that if people are going to use AI tools, they're starting to adopt those AI tools, that they have access to only the data that they need access to. So yeah, we know that many of the common tools and technologies that our customers are using, they really encourage that oversharing as a part of the collaboration aspect, so that you can quickly send that document to a colleague. But what happens when they don't need access to that information anymore? Those sorts of things create security vulnerabilities in networks. So we're really working with customers now to talk about data sensitivity, data classification. Do they really need access to that information? Should it be public information? Should it be confidential information? Should it be restricted use so that only certain people in the organisation can see it? And the example I tend to go to is it's like letting a tradie into your house, to do a piece of work. They've got to fix the bathroom sink. Do you leave all your doors open so they can go into every room in your house, or do you just let them access the data that they're going to need access to? And AI, from what I've seen and what our customers have experienced, operates in a really similar way. It can surface information that, based on those access levels.
So I think what I'm hearing, and let me know if I'm right, is while yes, using the tool, it's also about allowing staff to only be able to put certain data into that tool, and therefore you're protecting it because the tool's only got so much access.
Yeah, I think it's really about creating a culture of security within your organisation, encouraging people to appropriately classify data. When you're starting to look at these AI tools, have security and compliance as top of mind. What sort of techniques do they use to prevent, surfacing information that it shouldn't. So, for example, personally identifiable information, we don't want that to be out in the world. If there's ways to protect against that, then we need to be looking at, do those tools have certain capabilities to prevent that, data masking and other sorts of things. So yeah, we've seen examples where there's prompt engineering attacks where malicious actors are effectively, there might be an AI that's responding to an email. They're convincing the AI to surface confidential information because the right safeguards and controls aren't in place, and there's documented examples of that.
That's extremely scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly happening in the AI space a lot. Guardrails and all that sort of stuff is so important to consider when you're implementing an AI solution into your business. Absolutely.
So Olivera, I guess one of my questions would be, you being focused on the human side and the change management and adoption piece, is what sort of considerations a business might take when they're looking to evaluate these tools or introduce a new AI tool into their business?
So when we consider incorporating any AI tools in our business, there are 5 key steps that we need to take to understand what's the best solution. So the first one is about defining the problem. What is the problem we're trying to solve? Are we, let's understand our business. Where can we create efficiencies? For example, what are the tasks that are taking most time in our business? Let's say there's a task that takes 15 hours. We may bring it down to 5 or less hours, with AI solutions. So it all depends whether we want to drive efficiencies, whether we want to drive revenue, do we want to mitigate any risks, for example, do we want to reduce costs? So those are all important considerations that we need to take into account. Number 2 is about data readiness. So we as an organization have a lot of data, but do we have enough data to train our AI? That's another question. Do we have enough good data that AI can use to produce good outputs? That's super important. Is this our data really well structured?
And that's a really good point you just made as well. I thought I might just add to that. It's because, there's the old school saying of, GIGO, or garbage in, garbage out when it comes to systems. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're incorporating AI tools into your business, you can bring the best AI tools into the business with the best algorithms. But if you don't have good data, it's not going to provide you with the output you're looking for. The other important aspect to consider is, does the AI tool need access to your sensitive customer data? If it does, you need to understand how is the data processed and where is it housed. It's super, super important. Number 3 is about evaluating the tool. The good thing about AI tools now, is that you have so many tools out there, but you can also easily tweak them to fit for purpose. So, you can have a marketing tool out there, but you can actually fit it with purpose. So with your brand colors, with the way you speak and all that sort of stuff. And all of a sudden you have an amazing tool that will save you so much time in producing content, for example. What I want to stress here, what's important is that any AI tool, so any provider that comes to you offering you an AI tool, it's important that you actually test it on your data if it's possible, and that way you'll be able to see whether this is the right fit for you. Rather than, usually what happens is these AI companies provide you with a demo which is pre-recorded, which is pre-trained and so on. But what you want to do is really evaluate whether this is a good thing for you and your business. Another important thing to consider is integration. Can this tool integrate with the rest of your platforms, with the rest of the tools that you've got in your organization? Because ultimately what you want to do is you want it to talk seamlessly to your other tools. You want to have transparency and efficiency and the rest of the stuff. And the other important aspect there would be about scalability. So if, for example, your business grows as a result and you need extra, whether it's compute or whatever it is in the background, you need to make sure that this AI tool actually can provide it. Because what you want to avoid is, okay, we've trained this tool, now we got to the stage where, oh, what are we going to do now? This tool can't go any further. So this is a super important component to consider. The next one, number 4, is about developing change management and training your team. It's super, super important. Why? Obviously, every time you incorporating a new tool into the business, it's important to communicate, why are we doing that? What is it going to do to the business? How it's going to affect everybody? So to remove any skepticism, for example, from employees, I think not just about removing skepticism, but really about taking your employees on a journey. So say, we're incorporating these AI tools. This is what it can do for us. This is how you can leverage it. So additionally, what we do is we actually train the teams. It's important to train them how they can use AI, how they can, make a difference, because the AI tools that we bring into the business will ultimately be as good as our people can work with. Because what will happen, the AI tools are not just one-off tool that we bring into the business and here you go. Basically what happens is our teams will be able to tweak it and improve and keep improving it. And as a result, the business will get a better outcome and obviously a better bottom line. So upskilling teams is really, really super important. And then the last part, which is not the least important part, is about establishing governance. So every leader, every organization should establish a policy about how AI should be used, what AI can do and what it can't do. Also for employees, what they can do with AI and what they can't do with AI. Because as we know, a lot of employees are dumping sensitive information into ChatGPT and some other tools, which should not be happening. So a clear policy on that should be really established and everybody should be clear. The second part is about defining ownership. So when you introduce AI tools into the business, we need to assign the humans who are going to overlook these AIs and what exactly is their role in the AI space. And AI tools can't work without, a human in the loop. So we need to monitor AI, how is it performing, tweaking it, improving it, and in particular when there are important decision-making outputs, we need to make sure that gets approved and that we are across it. So, yeah, that would be, I think, the 5 key things that need to take place. So, Sarah, I wanted to ask you a question. When we incorporate these AI tools from legal perspective, what are those important legal things that we need to consider when we're looking at AI subscriptions?
It's really interesting because in subscription contracts and subscription terms, we have very little opportunity to negotiate, but it's still important to review them, and you can get a lawyer to review them, or you might be quite savvy yourself in reviewing them, but you need to know what's in there because you need to know what that supplier is promising to do or not do, and you need to then make a risk decision based on that. And I loved earlier how you talked about wanting to know where the data is going. I think that's one question that I would ask almost straight away, is the data input or outputs, because it usually has some sort of cloud hosting, and of course Daniel and yourself could probably talk more about the technical aspects than me, but ultimately it's probably going to have some overseas element in some way. You need to understand, well, does that mean that there's personal information going overseas? Because under the Privacy Act you would be expected to take reasonable measures to make sure that overseas supplier is complying with the Privacy Act and privacy principles, and also if they don't, then you will be on the hook because you actually are responsible if they're breaching. Yeah. The other side of it is, in general, outside of the Privacy Act, is what sort of laws are they actually having to comply with? Because often in an agreement there'll be a governing law, and the type of laws that they need to comply won't necessarily be Australian. So that's something you need to check, because you'll still need to comply with those as a business owner, and you need to make sure they're consistent, or if not, see if they'll be happy to change that and comply in some shape or form with the Australian laws, or satisfy yourself that whatever they're doing as part of their tool, it's not going to put you in a risk position in relation to your requirements. It may be that they're not, using the data in a way that would put that at risk, and that's fine, but you just need to ask the question and really understand. And get your cybersecurity expert involved, get your implementation team involved to help you ask the questions if you're not sure what they are. Also, another thing, which is, it's a privacy thing, but I think it's also a contractual thing with your customers possibly, is are you going to be able to get access to certain data you've input there? Would you be able to delete it? Can you remove it? What happens to it? How long do they have access to it? Because sometimes in your contracts and also under the Privacy Act, there are abilities for customers to ask for that, for changes in their personal information, but also on a contractual basis, some particular customers or enterprise customers or government customers, they'll want you to be able to delete it, remove it from any system. Well, what happens if the contract says we will never let you do that? So it's probably best to check and then ask. And then if it's not quite clear, it may be that the system itself doesn't. Once it's done its job in the system with the information you put in, perhaps it doesn't store it, and so that's not a big issue for you. But it's still worth asking the questions. Another thing this is a really interesting, and I do find it very interesting, is like who owns the IP in these things? Because we obviously we might be putting information, data, depending on the tool, you may be willing to put confidential information in there. You want to make sure you've got that ownership still. But the tool is going to do its part, and then it's going to put an output, which is a mixture of what the tool has used and what you've put in. So who owns it then? Do I have exclusive ownership? Is the tool allowed to reuse that and use it for other people? Because then no one's really owning it, and then you've got the risk of confidential information being provided to other users because it's learnt from that and it's using it in the data. So these are very important questions from a legal perspective, but also an ownership perspective, how much control you want. These tools can do amazing things, but you might want to be the one reselling that amazing thing or reusing that for yourself, but you might not get that opportunity based on the terms and conditions and what the tool's allowed.
And there's also a whole factor to this as well, I think, that's worth considering, is the training data that these tools have been used to actually, was it trained on confidential information?
Yeah.
A lot of these tools, these large language models, they pull their information from publicly available sources. Are we by assuming that, that information is public, that it's free for anyone to use? I think the answer to that is probably no, right? So, I mean, these tools pull that information in. They're trained on all these different sources, and then they produce an output. Is there, are you potentially setting yourself up in the future one day where that might become an issue?
I mean, that's 100% right, and it is such an interesting intellectual conversation, but it's a real practical issue because, just a really basic example, perhaps you're using it to help you write an article, a blog article. Well, maybe it's gone and checked out all the other blog articles that actually have copyright on them. So how many people have I breached here? And you don't know. And you need to check the terms and conditions to see if they've got any liability. Do they offer you a third-party IP indemnity or warranty? I mean, using legal technical terms, but it's basically a promise that they're not breaching anyone else's third-party IP. They may not be able to give you that because they don't know if they are.
Absolutely.
And sometimes when you ask these questions, you might be talking to a salesperson and it can be quite surface. So don't be afraid to ask more. Use the terms and conditions and say, well, you haven't got this normal, you've got a situation here that really says you're not liable for anything. So what is going to happen? And put the use case to them and see what they have to say about that. And it may be that certain tools you just don't put certain data in, or you don't use for specific things, or you don't use it all, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it does pay. And I did sort of talk about the liability. The other thing I would just also check is, ask them about the hallucinations, the accuracy, the outputs, because you need to keep it that eye open. I'd say in their contract, they're saying, well, this is a computer, we're not liable for anything, it's on you. So just ask the questions about how much you can and can't rely on it, and just build into your process, like you were saying, Olivia, the human element, the checking, the governance about when you're using that tool and what for.
Absolutely, and bias and hallucinations and all that sort of stuff. So it can also arise not just from scraping information, which is what most of these AI tools do, is basically scrape different content that maybe they're allowed or not allowed to do, but also internally. So if you have certain data within your organization that is, let's say, like the Amazon example they had about, employing people, it was skewed more to employing male versus female. employees. So basically, it doesn't provide women an opportunity for work because it was skewed in a way, the data was skewed in a way that was preferred for male employees. So we're talking about internal and external sort of data that, you need to consider what you're doing and making sure the human is in the loop.
And I know that's definitely being used in recruitment now. You can imagine the power of it. Hundreds and hundreds of CVs. But like you're saying, make sure the tool isn't discriminating because, you will be on the hook, not the tool.
Yes, absolutely.
And we were just talking about, making sure that we've got the governance. You've talked about before the training of staff, and what sort of training do you think business owners should be looking at to make sure the staff are getting, they're using AI appropriately, but they're also getting the best out of it?
Yeah. So basically, there's never been a better time to learn, to upskill, whether you're an employee or leader, whatever you're doing, or whether you're doing your own business. I think it's never been a better time for this. AI is evolving so quickly that we need to stay on top of it. In particular, the leaders. I think the leaders really need to stay on top of it to gain that competitive advantage. Because AI can really help us do so much more if it's done in a responsible way, of course. The top AI leaders are talking about, employees who don't use AI will lose jobs to people who are using AI. And I think the same applies for organizations. So if you're an organization and you're not using AI, really you need to get on top of it. So you will lose to those who are using AI.
Just one thing I might add on that, Olivera, is if you as an organisation, as a business, one company is adopting AI tools and the other isn't, then effectively you're at a competitive disadvantage to your competitors. So that's a really important factor, not just beyond the employee, but for the business itself.
Absolutely, and think about it. AI revolution. 1 month is worth 1 year previously in our traditional way of working. So you're really talking about you have to start now. Training is super, super important. So if you gain competitive advantage, obviously it's going to show in your performance and on your bottom line. But also as an organization, what you're doing is you're building an AI-enabled workforce that will improve your AI solutions that you're incorporating into your business, make them better, and as a result, that will also translate to a better bottom line. So you will have employees who are happy, who are happy that actually now somebody else can do those mundane tasks that they don't have to do anymore. Now they can be more creative, they can add value, and guess what? They will keep learning about it, and then what they might be doing is saying, okay, we have this particular AI tool which is just working great. Oh, I see a use case here. Why don't we do this? So you will have almost like AI-enabled ambassadors who will bring solutions to the leadership team and say, let's implement this. This will help us, It's taking us, let's say, 20 hours to do, but it's going to take us 1 hour or whatever the case might be. So I feel like this is going to bring the workforce, to have more meaningful work, probably maybe even work-life balance. Maybe employees can work 4 days a week instead of 5 and then 3 days relax. That's all possibilities. So I think, and there's no shortage of courses out there. Google, Microsoft, LinkedIn, there are all these different platforms where you can do the courses. We also have some at 8 People where we have courses that, where you can upskill your AI, you can upskill employees with AI of, where it all started, what type of LLMs and so on, and how you can use it in your business. So I think whatever you decide, just get into it. As a leader, make sure you deep dive into AI, what it can do, solve your problems, talk to vendors, AI providers, talk to consultants, and try and really bed down what you should be doing.
Yeah, it is so powerful, and in such a short time, I actually remember when I first heard about AI. Being a lawyer, we're sometimes a bit slow to the party when it comes to technology. And I'm not sure in this case we have necessarily actually been quite well received. But the first time I was like, well, I need to go see what this is all about. And I opened up Copilot and I could not believe this. I'm like, this is like supercharged Google.
Yeah.
What is going on? I mean, not that you can always rely on it, but I was just so shocked at how quick it could answer a simple question. And over time, you can use it for certain things that find the answer so much quicker. So, in just such a simple demonstration, then when you use the really more intelligent ones in the workplace, it can really transform. And for small business, medium business that don't necessarily have the resources of big corporate, this may be their chance to compete.
Absolutely. And look, even with the search, when you're mentioning, Sarah, about search engines, now I think a lot of people are going to ChatGPT and asking them, hey, give me the answer, rather than going to Google and then you get like 5 different links and then you have to search yourself. I think as in this AI revolution, we become lazy. It's like, okay, I could be thinking about, something. I go, no, I'm not going to even think about it. Let me just ask. Because, through ChatGPT, you can actually, they have voice-enabled version or text. So you're able to interact with it in such a simple way, and it will give you what you're after. And this goes back to, what do we want as people? Like, we want those efficiencies, we want information now, we want everything now. So as organizations, it's important to think how our customers are thinking, what are they demanding from us, and really serving it obviously in the best possible way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think from what I've seen as well, it's important not to just trust implicitly the outcome.
Of course.
Those
Absolutely.
responses. I mean,
Absolutely.
AI is just trained on, as we've said before, information that, sometimes it's even out of date as well. Those large language models are being updated all the time, and, you ask a question and it's pulling answers from 2024, so it doesn't always contain the most recent information. So I always say to people, fact check AI sometimes. It's really important to fact check AI because it can make mistakes, and it's an imperfect tool, even the best AIs. And I think as we move into this new era, it's really, really important to still do that research, to still do that fact checking when it comes to AI.
Especially,
Yeah, go on.
Especially the first answer, you should not assume it's correct.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what happens a lot. People ask a question and then they assume the first question is right. But you have to actually try and, it's almost like cross-examining. Interrogating, absolutely. Yeah. So you have to interrogate it from a few angles to see what the answer is. Yeah. And then even then you have to think, oh, is this right?
Yeah. Especially when you're using things like ChatGPT. I mean, being a lawyer, I do see things that come to me, and I know that ChatGPT has created this letter, created this contract, possibly, and it's the best part is who's putting the information in. So if you're just putting a one-liner, it's probably not going to give you the detail that you need. Yes. And if you haven't checked it, it's likely there is incorrect things. It may take you a number of questions for it to get even close to right, but you need to remember that it's only as good as the driver behind it, and it's only as good as the data and the information that it's finding. Like Daniel said, it's looking all over the place. It could be out of date. For example, from a legal perspective, those laws may not be in date anymore. They could be looking at American laws, British laws, nothing to do with Australia. They could just be assuming that you want these certain things in your letter or these certain things in your contract, but who knows if that's what you really need. So use it for things that it's appropriate to use it for and trained for, but don't expect it to replace you. And it will be a real skill to have that to be that interrogator, to be the quality checker. And I think we'll see roles coming out as these quality checkers. And actually that is going to be quite a highly skilled and highly level job, because you're going to be an expert in that area, and you're going to be checking and being sure that whatever that AI is spitting out is correct.
Absolutely. So that's where prompt engineering, for example, is a good role, where you really need to know your work for example, in your field, in the legal field, you really need to understand it to be able to ask it the right questions so it can give you the right outputs. I'm not in legal space, so if I was to ask questions, I would completely get like a completely different result. So this is where prompt engineering for different roles will be super critical. And this is where the knowledge, you have to have the knowledge to be able to get those outputs.
Yeah, you still need to have the subject matter expertise in your field of expertise, and it's really about giving it that context, because the AI doesn't understand your role, it doesn't understand how your business operates. You really need to structure it, and I think the point about monitoring is a really, really critical one. We need to start, like if organisations are, let's not talk about generative AI, which is just content generation, but they're really starting to look at autonomous agents, whether that's sales agents or service agents or those sorts of assistants, you need to monitor them like you would a human for the outputs. And then you need to correct that and have processes in place to be able to adjust accordingly. It is definitely not set and forget with AI.
Absolutely. We will see number of agents being deployed in the organization where, you'll have head of product, head of, different departments who are going to be managing these agents. But not only that, I really envision that there will be like a chief AI officer that will basically talk to all these AI agents below them. So in any moment, the CEO will have transparency, or the owner of the business will have transparency in any moment what is happening in his business. He won't need to rely on those business reports and so on. And then, as you said, you'll be able to tweak those AIs, any day of the week. It's not going to be like, we wait for some process or, so it's just going to be so much more efficient.
Yeah, that feedback loop is going to be such a big thing moving forward. It's no longer, it's going to be how can we reduce down the number, a change that might have taken, 2 or 3 months to make, down to days, hours, minutes even.
Daniel, I wanted to ask you about, are there any actions that can be taken or safeguards that can be put in place to reduce the risk of data breach due to a business owners of its employees or use of AI tools?
The answer is yes, but also at the same time no, because we know that humans that are in charge of technology are still the weakest link, if I was to use that word, when it comes to technology. So, training is incredibly important, because where there's a will, where there's a way, people will put sensitive data into these systems. So I think that training aspect, that security culture aspect is so critical to make sure that we're not, potentially leaking data that we shouldn't be, particularly to those large language models, but, even worse, that those tools themselves are compromised and all that sensitive information that we put into them suddenly ends up somewhere on the dark web. I think it's important to start to think about, as you've said and you've mentioned before, those roles. It's the personas that you're starting to build within your organisation, because those personas also help us define the security model that we're going to put in place. So who needs access to what? There's still fundamental things that we need to do. One of the things that we work with our clients on a lot is to really understand the makeup of the data that they've got on their network. So there's some proactive things that you can start to do to scan your files for oversharing, which is something that I'd talked about before, but also to make sure that we can put those controls in place to make sure that, and there's a big term that's thrown around at the moment called shadow IT, which is people going out and installing applications and software that wasn't approved by the business or IT. The same thing's happening with shadow AI. People want that efficiency. They want, they want that productivity. So they're looking for these tools. They're seeking them out. You want to, as an organisation, start to guide them toward enterprise-grade AI or business-grade AI, rather than the consumer-grade AI that's offered. The last thing you want is people in your organisation, employees in your organisation, putting sensitive company information into personal AI tools where you have no visibility and control over what's happening. So this comes down to being really proactive in looking at how your data is used, having tools in place to monitor things like shadow AI, when you make your tool selection, in terms of those safeguards, it's about looking at what safeguards do they bring. From our perspective, one of the large language models that we tend to gravitate toward is the Anthropic or Claude-based model. They have a really good reputation. I'm not pushing one product or tool, but it's one of the safest models out there for people to use. They really take privacy and security seriously. And I'm not saying that the other models don't, but that's something to look at when you're assessing these tools is, how safe is my data going to be in those tools? Because you really need those safeguards, those boundaries in place. Microsoft have safeguards in place. Salesforce have something called the Einstein Trust Layer, which anonymizes data before it's sent out and then interprets the response on the way back. So sensitive data is not actually leaving your system. So, there's a number of things that you can do. I think it's really about being proactive, having those, having a good security culture, talking to your staff about these topics. Cybersecurity awareness training is something that we, as an organisation, pretty much mandate on our clients now. It's in their insurance, cyber insurance as well, that they have to do cybersecurity awareness training, and that's now leading into AI training with organisations like yours, Olivera. So it's really important that we have that security culture, but we also have that technology that sits behind it to prevent those data leaks that might be as a result of AI. Sarah, I think from your perspective, I would imagine that there's a pretty strong link back to the Privacy Act on that one.
Yes, there is. There is a notifiable data breach scheme under the Privacy Act that has been in there for a while. So that you could be captured by that. Now, just reminder, with the Privacy Act, not everyone is required to comply with that at the moment. If your turnover is less than $3 million, you may be part of a small business exemption where you don't have to comply unless you're a specific organisation. There is a list, but for example, health service providers are on that list. However, I will flag that that is one of the recommendations from a massive privacy review perspective that is possibly going to go, that they will not have a threshold for people to comply with the Privacy Act. So it would be good practice, regardless of your business, to get on top of what does the Privacy Act say. What are the privacy principles is the main thing. They're called the Australian Privacy Principles. They're in the back of the Act. If you look up the Privacy Commissioner website, you will see them. They're very detailed and explained. From an AI perspective, it's not that it's specific to AI. There's no specific law about, expressly talking about AI, but there's all these different laws, particularly the Privacy Act, where you still need to comply regardless of what tool you're using. The Office of Privacy Commissioner set out 2024, they released a guide about commercial use of AI, and one of the top takeaways at the top, you'll see it's like, don't expect it doesn't apply to the personal information you're using with AI. That is the take-home message. You will be required to comply with this, whether you're using an AI tool or not. And there's a number of themes throughout the Australian Privacy Principles that will apply, particularly one which people may not have thought about is one of the things is you're not supposed to use personal information for something that you haven't said you're going to use it for or collect it for, unless it's a secondary reason that would kind of be obvious. So perhaps you've had personal information for whatever reason, collected it in the service delivery, but you haven't told the customer that you're going to use it in your AI model. You may be in a situation where you're in breach, so you're probably going to need to do some updates around your privacy policies, your communications, privacy and personal information, and just in general data use. I think with customers it's about transparency. They want to know what their data is being used for, personal information or not. And contractually, that will be an area that customers or even your suppliers, you may negotiate about information about where is the data going, what privacy laws are going to comply, are you safely looking after my data? Because if you're not, you're going to be in breach of the contract, because personal information or not, my confidential information is valuable to me, so I don't want it out in the world. Another change that is coming is you've always needed to take reasonable steps to make sure that you protect personal information from misuse or unauthorised access or disclosure breach. However, it is being updated now that would include organisational and technical measures. So we are talking about the training and the policies. It will be expected that you've got them in place. It's not just about telling the customers, it's about telling your staff about making sure they're taking the right steps to protect and having safeguards if you can, and guardrails like we've talked about. Another interesting update, which I think clearly is coming from AI, but possibly other computer use, but it's when a system is making automated decision making, you will need to be transparent about that and making sure that they know that they're involved in the human decision making, whether that's solely or substantially so. And again, just as a general rule, as a consumer or customer yourself, would you like to know if someone's rang you up and it's a robot or not? Because that's just something that's going to annoy people. So I think, again, it's around the transparency, the communication, being honest in your terms of supply. Make sure it's clear what you're using it for. And then outside of sort of the Privacy Act, I mean, that's the really obvious one. And I think it'll keep evolving and we may see some more specific AI use legislation or not, but they will evolve that. The other thing will be things like the competition and consumer laws, because you will still be responsible for those. So you can't mislead or deceive. You can't make false representations or misleading representations. And if you're using a tool to provide something that's not correct, you'll be on the hook if it's not correct and you're made a promise that's actually not true. Also be careful on the other flip side. Be careful about what you're promising your AI tool could do. Perhaps you are got this new tool that can create a great template or something for someone, or using the chatbot will just be, you need to make sure you don't make promises that it can do more than it can, because it will, again, be you who are on the hook.
It was interesting the other day, Sam Altman, the OpenAI CEO, said we're right in the middle of an AI bubble because we're sort of hitting that expectation gap. People are now going, what's the next leap for AI? And it may or may not be delivering against that. So, I mean, checking that the tools themselves are capable is a really important thing that everyone needs to do.
Yeah, and exactly, because it can create things that aren't like up to scratch. Don't assume that it is, because I guess that's the difference, I think, with AI and what it will output is it can be quite convincing.
Yes.
Very convincing.
So always keep that one eye open. Is this correct? What am I reading? It can sound so technically okay until you read it. It's almost like, it's a bit like scams in a way. That first thought, you almost click because you think, oh, it sounds so legit, but it's not. So just you need to kind of have that attitude a little bit to AI. It's like, what's the reasoning behind this? Is it correct? We've had such a good conversation, so we're nearly at the end, but I'd just love to hear everyone's final words on like your last tip in a few words on using AI safely or implementing and getting the best benefits, whatever it is.
Okay, I'll start. Start implementing AI now. Don't wait. Have conversations. There's a lot of information out there. Talk to your colleagues. Talk to your talk to your leaders internally. Talk to your employees. You'd be surprised how much knowledge there is in the organisation already. Talk to advisors. Anybody that's in the AI space, and look at ways how you can incorporate AI as soon as possible. But that being said, what's also important that think about how you can build those AI blocks, because what you're building is an AI strategy which will start with one AI solution, but you need to make sure that you're building those AI blocks in a sustainable way, that you're working with organizations who actually can help you build that infrastructure of AI, that your AI will all talk to each other, and therefore your organization will benefit.
And Daniel, did you have some brief final words?
Brief final words. I think, start with an AI-based security audit of your organisation. You can take shortcuts. There's tools out there. There's partners like Codux that can help you understand where your gaps and your vulnerabilities are. In terms of adoption, I would say that's the most important thing from a security perspective, but in terms of adoption, look inside the tools that you're already using. Some of the tools that you are using today, the licenses that you're paying for, they might include some access to AI tools, so they could be a good starting point if your teams are looking at how they can adopt AI within the organisation.
And finally, I would just say, of course, as the lawyer, stay compliant. It's a powerful tool. It can really transform your business, but the law will still apply to you. So make sure you know what those laws are. Get the right people to help you. Get your cybersecurity expert, get your trainers, get your lawyers. That's what they're there for. And then you can really harness it safely, protect your data, update your privacy policies and your contracts. Thanks everyone for joining. It's been so good. I feel like we could talk for another hour, but unfortunately our time is up, and I really appreciate you joining today.
Thank you.